a question with some layers in it. So in Judaism, like you mentioned before, Christianity is considered as idolatry. How Judaism view that if a person is a Christian, since was born, raised in a Christian family, and then not knowing about the 7 laws of Noah and not knowing about all the mitzvot, how God in His infinite wisdom would then let the person astray when he's never heard of the concept at all, because Judaism is not in Indonesia. How would that person be judged when his entire life is raised with some concept and that concept is continuously being put to the person?
If we are merciful enough not to punish children who don't know any better, if our government here in Indonesia would never punish a 2-year-old for committing a crime because she couldn't possibly know any better, God, I assure you, is more merciful than us. God would never punish a Christian for what she did not know. People only held accountable for what they knew. We see that explicitly in Tanakh all over. As an example, when Abraham's wife, Sarah, was taken by Avimelech, whom he thought she was a single available woman. And God came to him at night and said to him, let her go, she's the wife of Avram. Avimelech said, I didn't know. And God said, I know you didn't know. Let's get rid of her. So he wasn't punished for that because he really didn't know. So no Christian is held accountable for what they did not know. I haven't wrapped my head around what Christians really, really believe, and I thought about this a lot. I don't think I've ever taught this, but I often wonder, what do Christians really think is going on? Now, I've never been a Christian, but I'm trying. The reason why I wonder this is a few reasons. I've never heard a Christian pray to Jesus as God created the heavens and the earth. I never heard a Christian say that. I always heard Christians speak about the Father who's created the heavens and the earth. That's very important. When Christians read the Christian Bible, the Trinity has not been invented yet. And therefore the Christian Bible is portraying Jesus as a servant of God, someone who God sent, who says the Father is greater than I am, John 14. Someone who says, I cannot do anything of my own, John 5:30. Jesus who has this huge dialogue with God in the book of John, from John 14 all the way to through John 17. These are massive dialogues with Jesus talking to God. He's crying out to God in his cry of dereliction. He's saying that if I testify of my own, my testimony is nothing, but it is the Father who testifies of me. Jesus who prays to God in John 17 that my disciples should be one as we are one. So that means that the writers of the Christian Bible clearly see Jesus as a servant and subordinate to the Father in every way. God is way up there, and Jesus is some sort of representation or reflection of God. Those who have seen me have seen the Father. Because if that's not the case, what does even the word Father and Son mean? That means if the Father and Son are interchangeable, then how is the Father not the Son not the Father? These words don't even have any meaning anymore, and when words mean everything, they mean nothing. So, I think what is happening is that Christians deep down recognize that there is one God, and that's God the Father. And they believe that Jesus, to our Trinitarians, they believe that Jesus is a God in a Greek sense, but not the God. He is a divine reflection of God, but he is not equal to God. It is impossible to believe that and make sense out of the Christian Bible. I hope that's the case. So I think what's happening is that there is, in the mind of the Christian, there's a cognitive dissonance, where they know they have to articulate the Nicene Creed, they have to say that Jesus is God, they have to argue with Jehovah's Witnesses and Muslims to go, oh no, Trinity, Trinity, Trinity. But in their hearts, I don't think they believe it. If they're thinking, how could they believe it? So I'm hoping that Hashem will have mercy on them. Christians are very sensitive to the doctrine of the Trinity. They'll fight for the doctrine of the Trinity above everything, and I think it's because they're insecure about it. They won't fight for the virgin birth as much as the Trinity, and they'll insist that the Trinity is in the Christian Bible, and it isn't. They fight with Muslims about this from here till tomorrow, and Muslims are right in going, are you insane? Like, look at the text, it's not there. And Christians get very angry about this. They get so angry that if you tell your pastor that you don't believe in God, you will get in much less trouble than if you say to your pastor, I believe in Jesus, but I just don't think he's God. You'll be thrown out of the church in a second. 1 second, you're out. You'll be immediately taken out of membership. Why? Because they're very insecure about it. They're very frightened of this. Churches are terrified of those who don't believe in the Trinity, because they know that if that comes tumbling down, everything does. So I'm not yet sure what's going on in the mind of the Christian. I think Christians are all insecure about this. The reason is because they tell me that. I mean, it's Christians who leave Christianity and become B'nai Noach or convert to Judaism and say to me, in truth, the Trinity used to bother me. I never would admit it, but it used to bother me. And I didn't talk about it because I was told I'd go to hell if I didn't believe in it. And I believe them, because I don't understand how a rational person could read the Christian Bible and believe it. So the in short is, I think that Christians are praying to God, really. I think they are, I hope they are. And they're not praying to Jesus as God, but as God's representative, as his messenger. Not quite a Muslim Rasul, where he's, something much more than a Rasul, okay? But not the Father. Unless it's some 90-year-old grandmother living in Monado who's just with rosary beads like this, so she's not reading anything, and I don't know, I don't know. I know Hashem is merciful. Hashem will not punish anyone for what they don't know, but also I think that people understand there is one God. So much so that something interesting has happened, and that is even today Hindus insist that they're monotheistic. You know that I lecture in this country quite a bit, and I have Muslims and Christians who come to my lectures, and the only person I ever insulted that I know of was when I lectured in Bali when I first came here, and I was ignorant. I didn't know. I didn't get it. So I thought there were only Christians and Muslims there. So I said that Hinduism is idolatry. And there was one young man who was very insulted, and he said, no, Hinduism is monotheism, and we're the oldest monotheism. And here I am in Bali with like statues of Hanuman and, all the gods, the deities that they bring daily sacrifices to. Every house in Bali practically has a altar where offerings are brought to the many different gods, Vishnu but he was totally insulted that I said that Hinduism is idolatry. And I felt bad because, frankly, I never had a religious conversation with a Hindu before. I never did. Oh, once. A Hindu once told me, jokingly, we have one commandment, not to eat beef, that's it. So I said, okay, you guys are obviously not very serious. But okay, so like, how did Hinduism become monolithic? But obviously, all these pagan religions, Hinduism is really a religion of many different fusions. Because of the scientific discoveries over the last nearly 2 centuries, where we figured out pretty much that we're all carbon, that means we're really all the same stuff, and it's just atoms rearranged, but it's the same stuff. That paganism is just not, I mean, raw paganism is untenable. But we know now that it's all the same, that the DNA of a dog and me are 98% in common. The point is, we know there's only one God. And the fact that things seem dissimilar and creatures seem highly variegated is really only an illusion. It's not that the science we know now. We know there's one God now. And what the Jews have been screaming for thousands of years since Abraham was correct, and the pagans were wrong, and now the pagan world is suddenly reinventing itself to say, no, we're always monotheists, and we Zoroastrians were always monotheists. And I'm going, really? And when did that happen? And, all right, it's good. So I hope that God, that God is the merciful one. I'm not God's manager, I'm a salesman. But I do know He's merciful. I do know that everyone is given a chance, and I pray for their souls that they would turn to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.